Hello, MedTech Insight enthusiasts. This is Dr. Jennifer Joe, and I am back in my regular location. And my fabulous co-host, Dr. Ami Bhatt, who's also back at her regular location. So we're delighted to get back into the swing of things again. Dr. Bhatt is in her beautiful office at Mass General Hospital. Yes, I've heard how fancy your office is. When we're not hosting the show, Dr. Bhatt is running the Massachusetts General Hospital telecardiology program, seeing congenital heart disease patients, and teaching at the Harvard Medical School. I also want to call out that Dr. Bhatt is the incoming American Heart Association president. So you're the president-elect. Is that right,
We're in
Dr.
Boston.
Bhatt?
Yep, exactly.
So I'm just going to take a pause right here, and can you give us a little bit of a spill about when that starts, what you're doing?
We have a phenomenal board here in the greater Boston area for the American Heart Association, and work really closely with national and other sections. But amongst our focuses are things that I really love, paying attention to social determinants of health and how important that is for good cardiovascular health, teaching patients about self-advocacy and agency, which is partly why I'm so excited for today's conversation and having Heidi with us. And then really thinking about what are the major issues where we can make a difference in maternal mortality, especially from cardiovascular disease, kind of being at the center of that. And Dr. Passi is going to be with us too, who also does a lot of women's heart health. So excited to talk with both of them, but the American Heart Association doing great things. So look for us. We have our national scientific sessions coming up very shortly. And then February is, of course, Heart Month, but not the only month that we should be focusing on cardiology. Although today, this is an interesting thing about our show. We like to bring all sorts of people on from different walks of life, both from medicine, from investing, from entrepreneurs. And sometimes it touches cardiology and sometimes it doesn't. Today it does, and I feel like I'm home.
Today it definitely does.
I woke up this morning and I was like, "This is going to be a great afternoon," and so it's good to feel like we're home.
But I do just want to take the opportunity to underscore how proud I am of you being the president-elect, and what an impressive leader you are, but also the focus on what's really some pressing issues that, COVID's really brought it to light, but maternal fetal morbidity and mortality, and doing a better job of that. And also, social determinants of health and how important that really is. We call it social determinants of health, but it runs the gamut of really understanding the neighborhood, access to food, perceptions, and communication. And it's always been a belief of mine that will move the needle in healthcare more than anything else. So very excited.
So I'm gonna have to say thank you, and then I'm gonna have to give a shout out today. And I don't know that he's watching, but my husband Neil Manyar is a PhD in public health, and he runs public health over at Northeastern University, and he literally teaches the classes on all the things you just said, how the social determinants of health affect you, how do you get into communities. And so I oftentimes, we joke about imposter syndrome, but I oftentimes feel like when I start talking about this, how can I talk about it when there's an entire public health force out there doing it? And then you realize that's what's wrong. It's the silos. Mm-hmm. Each of us can absolutely contribute in our own way. And in our case, it's through the show, it's through the American Heart Association, it's through the emergency department work that you do, where, we can't just leave social determinants of health to the public health group. We can let them lead us, but we can also see how we can be effective. So anyway, shout out to my hubby today.
Oh, to Neil, yay. If he's not watching, I'm going to be very disappointed now.
It's okay.
Oh, is he taking care of the kids? Or is he working? Or is he helping the COVID problem?
All of the above. Shall we? Can we tell them a few updates on things that are going on, maybe?
Yeah, definitely. It was a whirlwind couple of weeks. We were at the Convergence Forum, which was really a convening of leaders in biotech, pharma, and what's happening there, and also the incorporation, and as it's called, the Convergence Forum, of digital health really starting to intersect very closely with that. And I just got back from the AMIA conference, which was in San Diego. Strangely, San Diego is not as warm as I was hoping it would be, but a great opportunity to reconnect with some of my fellow IT and healthcare community that I haven't seen since for 2 years now. Dr. Bhatt, do you have even more exciting news for us to talk about?
So I do. First, I will say I was supposed to be in Las Vegas today. So a great conference out there. I will be talking virtually there at 1:00 when we're done here on really thinking about value-based healthcare in this new kind of emerging healthcare market. And how are we going to do that when we think about digital health and med tech? So excited to give that lecture at 1:00, even though I'm not in Vegas. And then our book, yes, there it is, has finally been released for publication. Thank you to our audience who's been following along with us and waiting for this. But Healthcare Information Technology has been a series that Springer has actually been running for many years. They were really forward thinking as a publisher and thinking about health tech. And so we were grateful to be the first ones to do cardiovascular disease care with them. And so this is an example of the chapters that you will see. It is available in ebook or printed format for those of you who are, Asian aunties like the two of us and just like having something in your hand. But I hope you guys get a chance to at least take a look at it online. And we're happy to chat more about it. So reach out to us, social media or otherwise, if you have questions or thoughts about what we've written, because it's really the beginning of a conversation as well of how we're going to change things moving forward.
And are you going to have some copies for your students? And are your students going to have you autograph the textbook?
Do you autograph a healthcare information technology book? I'm not sure that that's a thing. The book signing idea is very exciting. I've always wanted to go to I've always wanted to go to the little bookstore in town, right? And be there. And I think for that, it's going to have to be my next book. That's for that kind of a signing. But again, thank you guys for
allusion to your next book.
It's a gentle allusion to my next book. Good. Shall we start to tell them about our guests today?
We will, yes. As a reminder, this is MedTech Insights. We stream live and also are recorded almost every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Time. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. We love our audience members when our audience members participate. If you're watching on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, just type in who you are, where you're watching from, and questions that you have for our guest. So Dr. Bhatt, I think you're going to introduce our wonderful guest.
A quick reminder, everything that either Dr. Joe, myself, or our guests say represent our own opinions and not the opinions of those companies with which we should work, consult, or affiliate. So with that, I thought we'd bring on both guests together today. So I'm going to introduce them both, and then we can all have a conversation. So first we have Heidi Dosse. Heidi is passionate about improving patient outcomes. And she uses actually her athletic events to inspire people who are living with heart issues. We were talking a little bit earlier today, and Heidi comments on the fact that she was kind of telling us what it's like to essentially kind of die and almost come back to life multiple times in her life. And she'll show you some pictures of what she used to be like and how she found her way to athletics. Importantly, she also just published a beautiful article talking about how we can really think about coaching in athletics as a mechanism to actually coach and improve patient care. And so I can't wait to dive into that with her. She partners...
Athletics, I just want to underscore, this is not like what I do in athletics. I run a little bit on a treadmill.
She's a cyclist. We're talking real athletics.
I think it's triathlete. She's gonna clarify.
Okay, she's gonna clarify. It's all stuff that I don't do. I stretched this morning, but let's not. Anyway, we'll keep going. She partners with physicians and researchers worldwide to provide insights regarding patient experience and ideas for engaging patients. In addition, she speaks globally, educating audiences on digital health, which is how we have her here with us, the use of data in healthcare. We also have Dr. Neena Passi with us today. She is an assistant professor in the Department of Internal Medicine at UT Southwestern Medical Center. She completed her cardiovascular disease fellowship at the University of Pennsylvania and then went down south to get a little bit more heat. She specializes in cardiovascular disease with a focus on preventive cardiology, cardio-oncology, and women's heart disease, but importantly, has really been leading the charge in thinking about using digital health at home, having patients engage with different wearables, and has a lot of insight into what are some of the barriers or challenges we have in actually implementing digital health and wearables in a larger scale fashion in cardiology. So excited to have both Heidi and Neena with us today. Let's bring them out. Hello. So glad to have you both with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is a great opportunity. And, you know, we usually bring on one person and then the other, but there's so much that we can all talk about together that I just thought it would be great to bring you together. But maybe why don't we start, Heidi, with you? Because I was trying to tell your history and Jen pointed out I was doing somewhat of a horrible job. So will you just tell us a little bit about your story, what you're comfortable sharing about your journey as a patient, and then how you founded Tour de Heart and what you're doing now. And then we'll turn to digital health and talk to Dr. Passi as well.
Sure. You didn't do a bad job of introducing me. Thank you so very much for having me. You know, this is such a great forum to bring a patient voice on, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. My story, I've been an experimental heart patient since 1982 when I was diagnosed with a rare heart arrhythmia. In 1983, I had one of the first AV ablations, and I have been 100% pacemaker dependent since then. So I'm currently on my 7th implanted pacemaker. The joys of being 100% pacemaker dependent and the, you know, kind of going from one device to another is where I ended up having complications that led to some infections and heart failure from a viral cardiomyopathy, and then scar tissue that, as in this picture, where I ended up having open heart surgery in 2010. And I didn't want to just survive the surgery. I wanted to live a life I was excited to get up for each day. So I set the goal of being a competitive cyclist. And I think the doctors and my friends kind of humored me and said, "Oh, that will be good." And my challenge ride was a 200-mile single day bike race from Logan, Utah to Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Wow.
Which I ended up completing. I've now done that one 6 times. Got back to my passion of racing mountain bikes and doing stage races around the world, and got tired of people asking, "But have you ever done an Ironman?" So in 2019, I took on the challenge of teaching my pacemaker how to run and swim. It had been optimized for cycling. So I got it done, had to learn to swim and run in 30-second increments until I could get it to where I could actually, get across the finish line. And in 2019, completed my first full Ironman.
Oh, congratulations.
Currently, I'm here in Las Vegas because over the weekend, I just completed a 25-hour solo mountain bike race in Hurricane, Utah. So
oh my goodness.
Still racing. And that's part of what why I started Tour de Heart is we don't have enough role models and inspirational heroes in heart disease. So by getting out there and being willing to show what's possible, I can inspire others to choose to want to get well and choose to do amazing things.
Heidi, what an amazing story. And I love the way you tell it too, because it kind of gives hope to all of us that we can do this, which is wonderful. So one of the things that we kind of talk about a lot, you and I and Jen and Dr. Passi too, is how we get patients to engage more, right? Mm-hmm. How do we get patients to engage in their own health? And so I think that's in an area I would love to chat about. And I'm kind of pre-telling you so you can think about it a little bit. Okay. Dr. Passi, why don't we have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit also about how you got into kind of thinking about wearables and digital health and how that figured into your practice and your interests.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on this show. And it's wonderful to hear straight from, a champion like Heidi about her experience and everything she's doing for, patients and promoting patient advocacy. I think that's truly inspiring. So, I come from a clinical perspective, clinical background. I've just started practice. But one thing, I'm focused on is both, chronic disease management, helping patients manage their hypertension, heart failure, chronic heart disease symptoms, but also disease prevention. So, giving patients tools such as these wearable devices that, really empower them to monitor their own vitals, helps them feel confident in, the care that I'm delivering them, but also gives them real-time feedback in how they can promote their own healthy lifestyles and behaviors.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So I guess a question then for both of you, and Heidi, since I gave you the prep, I'll have you go first. Can we break down patient engagement a little, just as we're starting this conversation, right? What does that mean to you? Because I always, as a patient, when my primary care doctor, here at Mass General asked me, how have you been exercising? All of a sudden, I feel some level of guilt towards her. And I have patients walk into my office too and saying, Dr. Bhatt, I know you're not going to be happy. I haven't been on the treadmill as much as usual. And I think as a physician, no, it's not that I'm not unhappy or disappointed in you. It's that I wish I knew how to better motivate you. By the way, I wish I knew how to better motivate myself some days, right? So just talk a little bit about what patient engagement is to you and what it feels like, and when we get it right, what it feels like.
Okay. Great question. Patient engagement is often kind of delivered in a one size fits all. Okay, you're supposed to get exercise. But I think if we back up and we look at meeting the person where they are in their journey. So when you become a cardiovascular patient, when you're diagnosed, you have to remember, like, the world's been sort of ripped out from underneath you, and you're trying to figure out who you are now. And we default to fear and kind of this anxiety and, that idea of, do I feel safe enough to have the confidence to engage in exercise? So I think that there's the engaging with the patient in when they're just diagnosed. What do they need? What does this mean to them? How do they feel comfortable that any kind of exercise or just activities in the life they live, aren't going to explode their heart? Then there's you start some sort of the treatment, therapy, or you have a surgery, and then you go home, and now you really need to meet the person with, where are they in day 0 to when the steri strips come off, because that's all about wound care. They're not really concerned with, am I getting exercise? It's, I didn't die, and is my wound healing? So meeting them and giving them the information that they need to feel, confident that everything is working as intended. And it's really at the first, 30 days is when you can start to actually use your arms again. So trying to tell people they need to get exercise while at the same time don't use your upper body, it's like this mixed signal, but no one ever tells them, when can I actually start to use my upper body when I've been conditioned to this fear and being scared? So I think the engagement comes with, first 30 days, what does a patient need to feel safe and to let go of fear? Then from 30 days to 90 days, how do they begin to feel comfortable, confident in walking and movement and picking up that gallon of milk, opening the refrigerator, things like that, because we have to celebrate those successes. And then at your 6-month mark, that's where it's what kind of exercise you beginning to do. And then how are you going to start to celebrate your 1-year anniversary? Getting people excited about a celebration of something that's important and unique to them versus engaging somebody in you have to get out and you have to do walking and you have to walk on the treadmill, which even I don't prefer to walk on a treadmill, so I can fail miserably. So that really, I just think that some of the engagement and the wearable devices is so impactful because, I started this journey back in the 80s. We didn't have wearable devices, so I didn't leave the house much because I was sitting on the couch counting heartbeats. Is it working? Is it working? I don't have to count heartbeats anymore because my Apple Watch will tell me, I can collect an ECG, and my Garmin tells me what my performance metrics are. And that frees my mind up to think about a lot of happy, positive things instead of counting heartbeats.
I love this. So first of all, the entire way that you reframed that is so important. I'm just going to reemphasize this, which is, we talk a lot about personalized medicine, why we have personalized medicine people on the show and digital health. What you just described is the basis of what kind of healthcare should be, right? Not just one size fits all. You're going home from the hospital, here's what you do, but who are you as an individual? What do you need at each subsequent stage? And how do we provide that for you? How do we support you in that? And how do we listen to you and what you like to do? So you love to cycle, not the treadmill. I love to dance, not getting on a treadmill. There's a lot of not getting on a treadmill going on today. But I think those kind of things.
I got on a treadmill today.
You got on a treadmill today. I was very proud of you for that.
I'm boring.
But I think that's really essential to that caregiver-patient relationship, is listening to what stage they're at and what they need. And I love the fact that it really sounds to me like coaching. I was like, gee, I wish somebody would do that with me. Like, what stage am I in right now? What do I need to focus on, right? How do I let go of certain fears or expectations and do the next thing? And so I'm going to come back to you next and talk a little bit about the concept of coaching and how we apply it to patients. But Neena, let me turn to you for a second. As a physician who is both seeing patients in the hospital and sending them home, and then also doing chronic disease management or prevention, where are you finding that having wearables, like Heidi was talking about, are helping you in your patient care? And are there places where you're hesitant to use it or not sure that your colleagues will be comfortable using it? Will you tell us a little bit about kind of where wearables seem ideal to you and where we're still working on it?
Yeah, sure. So, I think Heidi hit it on the head about, patients go through this journey, and as clinicians, we kind of have to create this roadmap for them of, how they're going to progress through that journey of recovery, and then get back to the lifestyle that, they want to live. Where I see wearables most useful is kind of in that chronic recovery process, after they've gotten over this acute sort of rehab phase, where, they either for, preventive purposes or recovery purposes would like more continuous feedback on their blood pressures, their heart rates, how they're doing with their activity, the number of steps that they're taking. And so really in that chronic disease management, field is kind of where I see wearables most applicable. And really, I think wearables have allowed us to take healthcare delivery outside of just, the hospital and the office, but into patients' homes and provide them with care on a more continuous basis. So I think, that there's a lot of promise for this technology.
Lovely. And I will reemphasize that, right? Having continuous rather than episodic care, continuous touch points rather than saving up all your questions or all your needs for that one time a year is so important. And it's patient-centric. We are coming to the patient now rather than making them come to us, which is really the way it used to be back in the old days, right? We're headed back out for house calls, but now we're doing it with technology, which I think is great. When you are using wearables with your patients, are you prescribing it to them? Are you letting them get what they want and then telling them, hey, do you have something? Do you want to talk to me about it? How do you do it now? And how would you like to do it as you're building your practice?
So it depends on the problem. I kind of always start with the problem in mind. What is it that we need to address? So, for acute issues like, working up lightheadedness, palpitations, oftentimes I'll have to prescribe a clinical grade device like a Zeo patch in, the acute setting for either 14 or 30 days. But oftentimes, those monitors may not catch something and patients still don't feel reassured and still want some sort of feedback. And so I think that these, not necessarily clinical grade technology wearable devices, but still FDA approved devices like Fitbits, Apple Watches are very useful to patients. And as they become more accessible, hopefully patients will become more comfortable with using them. And as clinicians, we're also going to have to become more comfortable with, prescribing that technology as well and knowing how to use it ourselves and educating our patients, both on how to use it, but also what the limitations of those devices are.
I love that concept. We've been talking, Jen and I were talking about this last week, which is I'm looking forward to being able to prescribe different digital wearables, right? Different FDA approved wearables, because I think it enables us to say, I think this would be useful in your case. I think this is not as helpful because it's giving you this information about that. You don't really need an EKG. You just need a heart rate, right? Or you don't need the O2 sat, or yes, you do. And also, hey, you don't need this type of thing. You need a blood pressure cuff, but you don't need to manage your heart rate because that's not useful information. It's just going to be extra data between you and I that may confuse the issue. So the ability to prescribe also gives us the ability to not prescribe and therefore maybe save our patients from some anxiety. You know, it's funny, Heidi, you talk about the reassurance you feel by having these devices. I also have patients who create more health-related anxiety in themselves when they have a device. And so maybe will you talk a little bit about that and monitoring and what you'd advise patients who are watching also, or clinicians, in terms of how do we find that balance between measuring and over measuring?
Right. And that's a problem. You know, we've gone from it wasn't that long ago when, in order to do AI and create models and machine learning, we needed to find data, and trying to find large data sets was a big deal. We now have a lot of large data sets. In fact, there's so much data, it's more of a fear of drowning in it. But I look at the, you know, how do you choose what digital wearable to use? It's kind of like, how do you pick out what computer you want? I mean, you can buy technology for technology's sake, but you have to have an interest in technology. Usually what you do is you get the right tools to get that, you know, provide the outcome that you're looking for. And that's the same thing with how to use these wearables or these mobile apps. I mean, gosh, there's 40, 50,000 potential mobile apps that someone can download and then show up to their physician. And what is a physician supposed to do? It's like, I've never seen this. I don't know what it's collecting. So it's really, again, it's meeting the person where they are. Some patients just want a wearable that gives them a green, happy face most of the time. That means everything's working as intended. A yellow one if there's something that they should be aware of, and red means call the doctor. You know, and that's sort of how our remote patient monitoring devices work. The one that sits next to your bed, I've got a latitude communicator that passively interrogates my pacemaker. But then you have people that want all the data, and you know, I use all the data and I use it to determine when I should take different pharmaceuticals. I've recently been prescribed a beta blocker. Well, I was able to use Strava and my Garmin to determine the time of day that gave me the best performance. So now I'm actually compliant, and I can see the cause and effect of actually taking it and the improvement in my performance, and knowing that I'm, you know, not going to be at risk of, you know, having a VTAC experience. But normally I would have taken that in the morning and I felt horrible. Figuring out that taking it at night gave me actually even better athletic performance. So that's another way of using it, but I want all the data. But the important part is to get to a point of prescribing a wearable that has the right form, fit, and function for the patient. And then the dashboard of insights is the patient and the physician agreeing on which insights you're both going to monitor. And if the patient chooses to be very engaged and use all the data, they can do that. But it's also the agreement that they're not going to drown the physician, and that you've got, you know, these 2 or 3 things you're going to watch together as a trend line to make sure they're trending in the right direction.
That was so perfectly said, Heidi. I love this concept of the patient and the physician working together with, as Dr. Passi said earlier, a specific goal or problem in mind. Here's what we're aiming for, and therefore here are the things we're going to use together. Feel free to use everything else. However, right now for what we're working on, here's where we are. By the way, if you see interesting insights, feel free to share them, because maybe the physician or nurse will learn something from that or become exposed to it, and vice versa. And then also remembering what Dr. Passi said, which is sometimes you need a medical grade device. Right. Sometimes it's not enough to have an FDA approved wearable. You actually need to be prescribed something. And so again, that conversation is important. Our time has gone by so quickly. It's kind of a little insane. Dr. Passi, can I ask you, will you share a little bit just about, if you had a chance to speak with our audience, kind of patients, investors, right? Entrepreneurs and clinicians, all of the above, about here's where you see the use of wearables going in cardiology. Will you share that? And then Heidi, I'm going to ask you to end with some thoughts on coaching.
Sure. So I think, there's a lot of promise for wearable devices in the future, and I see it in chronic disease management and prevention. And I hope that, these technology companies that are developing these products reach out to both clinicians and patients and try to tailor their products towards actual problems that need to be met, and get the feedback from clinicians and patients that are using their devices on a daily basis, just like Heidi has done with Boston Scientific, to make their products the best that they can be and the most useful.
Lovely. And Heidi, thoughts from you? You can expand on that and then maybe end with a few thoughts on coaching for us too.
Yeah, I think that we're getting to this really interesting place where, because of digital tools and having data insights, we can provide more actionable feedback as patients to our providers and to our device manufacturers that can be taken in and they can do something with it. It's very difficult to treat feelings, and until we had access to collecting data in the context of living our lives each day, that 24/7, we really kind of got to show up and say, here's how I feel. And then, what does the doctor do with your feelings? They have to run some tests to get some data, and then that data becomes useful. We've shortened that timeline to getting to useful, and we can now pass that on in a more robust, holistic way to the manufacturers, like I've done with Boston Scientific. When it comes to coaching, I started competitive sports when I was 6. So I had always had a coach for playing sports. So when I had to go through all the heart stuff, I just intuitively used coaching methodologies that if you want to get better at something, you are consistent with going to practice and you work through the right kind of pain. You rest when you need to rest, and then you get better. And I use that in how to recover with heart surgery. I got tired of now sort of being told, gosh, you're 1 in a million, you're a unicorn heart patient. Instead, I don't want to be 1 in a million. I want to help 1 million people be like me. This year, I just recently graduated from Duke University's Integrative Medicine, Health and Wellness Coaching certification. And I just sat for my national board exam last month. So my goal is actually to help to bridge that gap in helping patients and physicians use digital technologies to set goals, develop plans, and use the digital tools to execute against that plan. And it's meaningful and personal to the individual.
Oh, this is so perfect. We could go on and chat so much more. We're going to have to bring both of you back. I think just some parting messages that I heard from what you said. Dr. Passi is right. If you are working on any of these technologies, please reach out to patients and clinicians. Don't go it alone, because our feedback will be helpful in making things that are useful for our patients, right? And will probably help you in terms of market share, where people will use it. So there are 2 reasons out there for you to do that. Heidi, we didn't get a chance to talk so much about your work with Boston Scientific, but the emphasis is right. Device manufacturers are interested in hearing feedback and in understanding how the patients are using their technologies. And so to those of you who are using those, please recognize that it's actually helpful to give feedback and work with companies. And then lastly, I think really the message that Heidi and Dr. Passi both give us is, when we're thinking about delivering wearables and digital health, we are doing it with the intention of not creating more space between physicians and nurses and patients, but rather really creating a more holistic approach to delivering patient care. And there's probably, I'm totally biased. I'm going to come back around to this. There's no place better to do this than cardiology first, in my mind, because we have engaged patients, we have engaged clinicians, and we have so much data that can actually be relevant in making a patient's life better, not just longer, but better. So with all of that in mind, Heidi Dosse, Neena Passi, Dr. Jennifer, Joe. Such an honor to be chatting with you guys today. I'm sorry it feels a little short, but we're over the half hour already. But thank you again for all the work you do. It's really amazing what both of you have achieved and will continue to do. And we can't wait to kind of watch your careers blossom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to our audience.